Hello, it's Reija and welcome to another video. Today I am going to be sharing with you my February reading wrap-up, and I got quite a lot done during February, even though it was my birthday month and I had so much going on in school and stuff, but I still managed to read quite a lot of things. So without further ado, let's get started. First, I'm going to be talking about the few graphic novels that I read, starting with Descender, the last volume of Descender. And I have to say that even though I liked it, I can't say that it was my favorite Descender volume. I felt that the ending was a bit rushed and not all of the characters got satisfactory culminations for their arcs. And all in all, the finale felt like a precursor to a story that the author-artist duo Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen would rather be doing than a story on its own. And that kind of bugged me because I was under the assumption that Descender would be its own story and then Ascender would be a sequel but also kind of deal with its own themes and such. But as it is now with the finale of Descender, Descender really can't stand on its own because there is so many questions left unanswered. And also it makes me feel like Ascender can't stand on its own either because it really needs Descender as a setup. So this volume was a bit disappointing considering how much I've loved all the previous volumes. I ended up giving this one 3.5 stars. It was good, but not a very satisfactory ending. Next, I continued my read of 20th Century Boys by Naoki Urasawa. I read volumes 7 and 8, and I can't really talk much about them, much about the plot in them, because these are already a good third of the way into the story. The story is basically about a group of friends who are trying to defeat a mysterious group known as the Friends, who have basically taken a plan, an apocalyptic plan to take over the world that this group of friends cooked up when they were like little children. And there's this mystery behind that, like, is this group somehow connected to their childhood and such? And it is a science fiction dystopia. And Naoki Urasawa is a masterful storyteller, but in these volumes I started to feel a little bit tired about the whole mystery surrounding the main antagonist, who we still don't know who he is and what he is and stuff. There are just these allusions to him and his presence and what he is and who he is. And every time we are getting closer to finding out who he is, something else happens that makes you not find the answers. And that started annoying me in these two volumes because it was so obvious that we could have had this information and we could have finally found out who this person is. But we still need to add a little bit of twists and turns, and we still can't find out. So I'm really hoping that the next volumes will finally move forward in the story and we can finally start building up to the final conflict instead of running in circles with these characters. That would be nice. I still think that this is a very high-stakes series. It is a very smart series, and I like a lot of the character interactions and how these characters deal with their situations. Next, moving on to the books, and I will start with a book that I actually DNF'd, and that is An Unkindness of Ghosts by River Solomon. Now, don't get me wrong, I actually was kind of intrigued by the story and the characters, but I ended up DNFing this book about 90 pages in because the translation was vexing me real bad. This feels like it is translated straight from English. Like I can like see the sentence structures and the flow of the language, and it just doesn't feel like Finnish. Like it is translated into Finnish from English, but I still feel like I am reading a book in English, but in Finnish, you know, if that makes sense. The flow of the language felt really weird, and I was constantly pulled out of the narrative because the way the sentences were structured didn't feel natural, and it didn't feel like it should in Finnish. So I decided that I was gonna put this book down, and later on I will find an English version. Probably will buy an e-copy of this book at some point, and I will read it in the original language, because this translation was just not doing it for me. And I feel like when I'm reading something with this heavy subject matter, like colonialism, oppression, and classism, and how people who are in poverty and who are in the minority get treated by the people who have all the wealth and all the power, the so-called 1%ers, I really want to be able to respect and appreciate what I'm reading. And if I'm constantly being torn out of the story and my immersion is getting broken because of language issues, I think I'm just better off reading the original text at some point. But as of right now, I'm putting this one on hold. Next up to the books that I did finish. First up, Blanca and Roja by Anna-Marie McLemore. I really like this modern retelling of Snow White and Rose Red, and also Swan Lake. It was kind of a mix between the two. And once again, Anna-Marie McLemore kind of alludes to that modern setting, but doesn't really reveal any like information about the technology that would make you really figure out where she has meant for this setting to be set time-wise. And I love that. I love that ambiguous time frame. I think that this way her books really capture the essence of fairy tales, which are kind of timeless, and also they don't become time capsules set in one specific timeline. I love that she is able to break free from any constraints of a timeline or a setting or a part in history. And she's able to do these universal stories with really heavy themes, and I love that. I really like her writing style as a whole. I really love the sisterhood, the sisterly bond between Blanca and Roja. And I've heard criticisms about how they don't communicate with each other, but actually I found that to be really realistic. Like, I am a younger sister myself, and even though I love my sister and we have a very close and strong bond between us, but we also sometimes are in this kind of rivalry, and I found that really relatable in regards to Blanca and Roja, because you can really tell that they love each other and they would do anything for each other, but there is also that feeling of rivalry because of the whole family situation, because of the swans who will someday come and choose one of them, and one of them gets to live their life as a woman and such. And I just love that. I love complicated interpersonal relationships and their relationship was really complicated and it felt more real because of that. The only thing that I didn't really like was that sometimes the tension kind of went out the window. Like when Yearling and Paige come into the picture, there is this feeling that the swans start mattering kind of less because we are focusing on Yearling's family drama, and that kind of becomes the focus for a while. And I was like, no, away with you and your weird rich family drama. I want to know about the swans. I want to know about Roja and Blanca and their family history and all the cousins and such. Like, go away, you. And that was the thing that kind of bugged me. The whole Yearling and his family narrative kind of took time away from Blanca and Roja, and that was, for me, unfortunate. Also, the way that Roja was framed as a kind of antagonist and villain sometimes felt really weird to me, because I was like, she's done nothing wrong, so I'm kind of confused as to why she's being framed in an antagonistic way. So those two things kind of rubbed me the wrong way. But other than that, I really liked this story and I liked how it ended. It had the right amount of like high stakes, but also hope, which is very important to me, and like the family relationships and all the queer elements in the story. I gave Blanca and Roja 4 stars. And the final book that I read in the month of February was The Traitor Baru Cormorant by Seth Dickinson. And I loved this book. Well, as much as anyone can love this book, because it is very kind of dark and grim and it doesn't let you off the hook, and there are some really sucky things happening, and like I was torn apart emotionally by the end of it. But I really liked it. I liked the character of Baru. I liked how she was doubting herself, but at the same time, like Baru is a character that definitely suffers from imposter syndrome. Like she is like, oh, am I good enough? Like, can I do this? But at the same time, she is really savvy and smart and really gets shit done. And I love that complexity about her. I love that. I just loved her. Like, she is a very dynamic character that has lots of like contradictions, and I feel like a lot of the time people also have contradictions in themselves, and I found that to be a very realistic aspect in Baru's character. I also felt that this book has probably the best written childhood training montage ever, because Seth Dickinson tells you just enough about the world that you know what's happening and what the stakes are, but he doesn't dwell on like these childhood scenes too much. He shows just enough so that you can tell how Baru grows up and what are the key points in her childhood that end up making her the way she is. And yeah, I really liked it. The only things that I could have maybe wanted a bit more, first of all, a glossary, like maybe a pronunciation guide for all the names, because sometimes I was kind of broken from my immersion by having to really think hard, like how are these names pronounced? Like how is someone like Duke Unuksekom or Luxaksu, how are they pronounced properly? Like that kind of broke me from my immersion a bit, because at some point I used a different pronunciation, but then I started doubting myself and started pronouncing them in my head differently, so that was a bit off. Another thing was that we hear from these Stakhischi and Maya empires, but we don't really get to see and know in the context of the story, what they mean and what they are. So I would have wanted maybe a glossary about them, like about these empires and what happened and where they went and stuff. That probably would have elevated this story for me a bit. But overall, I enjoyed this so much, and I enjoyed the themes, and I enjoyed the twists and turns, that I could not justify giving it less than 5 stars, because I have been thinking about it constantly. I have been talking about it with people, even with my partner who has not read the book. I've been telling them like, oh, I've been feeling this way and this way about this character, and they're like, oh, okay, good job, great for you. So this book really made me think, and once again it handles those themes of colonialism and imperialism, nationalism very well. I don't think there's this theme of internalizing the spiel of the oppressors. Like, Baru is from a nation that has this polyamorous familial tradition. Like, she was raised by one mother and 2 fathers, and they were all romantically involved with each other. And she herself is a queer woman, but the imperial nation of the Masquerade shuns all of this. They are very heteronormative, very cisnormative, and definitely against all things queer. And there's this thing where she internalizes all the good things that the Masquerade has done, inoculations like vaccinations and technologies that help people live better, like sewage and stuff. But and she internalizes these things and is like, well, these are good things, but also she is suffering from having been brought up by the Masquerade away from her parents. And that was very fascinating to me, and I think that it was well done and well executed, and I can't wait to read the next one. So I gave Traitor Baru Cormorant 5 stars. And there you have it. That was my February reading wrap-up. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more videos like this. I will see you in another video very soon. Bye bye!